What did we think of the fantastic fantasy performances in the epic duel between Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts? And how about Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud? And the Steelers' offense comes to life. And welcome back, Kyren Williams. It's time to break down our Week 12 reactions. Here as we begin another week of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy football and betting for sportingnews.com.
Hey, I'm Michelle Magdziuk, researcher at NFL Network and fantasy analyst for NFL.com.
All right, Michelle, it was a crazy Week 12. We had the games all the way back to Thursday, so we're not going to forget about those. We had the Black Friday game, and then absolutely nuts when it came to the Sunday game. We still have one more game left here between the Bears and Vikings in Minnesota that could determine some key fantasy matchups. Some big performances all around, starting with that Bills-Eagles game with the quarterbacks going off, but fantastic week for a lot of your top fantasy football assets. And one returning guy, Kyren Williams, goes off. We'll break all that down for you on today's show. The top storylines there that you need to know, the injury updates as well. So we'll get into all that in today's show. Before we do that, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. We're your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player in the league. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day as well. So, Michelle, let's dive right into it. It was just great to watch. I wasn't sure about Jalen Hurts for half there, but they dug a deep hole for themselves, the Eagles. Another comeback victory, take it all the way to overtime. He scores the game winner, Hurts does. Allen was awesome in that game. These guys are 1-2 in fantasy, and they're 1-2 again here in fantasy in this particular week.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad that either of these guys had to lose, right? Like, I feel really bad for Josh Allen in that loss because it feels like one interception just ruins the game for him, right? Like, he had such a great game, that one interception, and then it allowed the Eagles to take the lead, and they ended up taking a lead again. There were a lot of lead changes there at the end. It was a crazy game, but both of them came through like so much for fantasy. I mean, they ended as a quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 on the weeks, and it was exactly what we wanted. Like, a lot of times these games don't live up to the hype, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But this did, because almost everybody that we wanted to be great was, besides AJ Brown, but at least he still got the touchdown, right? But only 37 receiving yards. I will say, my boy, Gabe Davis, I think I'm the Gabe Davis whisperer. I know when his good games are going to be. He came through with 105 yards and a touchdown. So it was just a really fun performance all around.
Yeah, I think good Gabe Davis. I mean, the coverage really has a lot to do with Gabe Davis. When I look at it, when there's all these open spots for him to run free, and then Josh Allen can buy time, right? That's happens a lot of plays where then Gabe Davis will break free. He'll get a little bit deeper. The defense will sleep a little bit. That's when he gets the job done. So it was his ideal type of coverage, right? You would seem that he would be great if you put him in single coverage and make him go up and get it, but he's not that type of player. He's a lot, I think, like Calvin Ridley. The fact he needs to use his body, he doesn't like to be pushed around, and he wants to just have a comfortable spot to catch the ball. And that's all what developed there against the Eagles. So it was great to see. I wanted him to go off again, which happened. And look, we knew this game could have had points. It looked slow at first. I mean, the weather was awful. There was rain and wind, but it didn't matter. These quarterbacks are just awesome. And these are the quarterbacks I kind of want as the prototypes here in fantasy because, again, they can get bottled up. You think you're about to sack them. They extend plays. They can either run for those chunks, get those big plays downfield. And I loved it. It was going back and forth watching two really good quarterbacks at work here. And you're right. Somebody had to lose that game. But, look, everyone looked really good on both sides. So that's what I wanted. And, again, we'll get another crazy Eagles game this week. They go from the Chiefs to the Bills to the 49ers. I mean,
Yeah.
this schedule does not let up. So, and we'll see. The Bills actually will be resting this week. So do not use your Bills this week. Now let's go to the Jaguars and the Texans, Michelle. This one was also pretty good. I can't believe it. I think it's done. Maybe I whispered Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley by saying, hey, get your act together on the bench. They come through once again. Ridley looked good. Again, having Zay Jones on the outside really helps them move around Calvin Ridley quite a bit. And that's what happened for a second straight week. So quiet first half, 0 catches, gets going in the second half. Look, maybe a little bit concerning for Christian Kirk, right? Because this is being ramped up a little bit. Also, I've noticed Luke Farrell is getting more run with Evan Ingram. And going beyond that, you're looking at more running backs involved, right? Dearness Johnson getting some touches here, Tank Bigsby. So the Jaguars overall, I think being a deeper offense is great for Trevor Lawrence, but not necessarily great if you want all these guys to go off at once.
Yeah, it seems like Lawrence and Etienne cannot have a good game together because
Yeah.
Lawrence stole that 1-inch touchdown. And that's really the one thing that made him have a good game, right? Again, he doesn't throw touchdowns. It doesn't, he's yet to have a game with 3 touchdowns this season. And he only has multiple touchdowns in a couple of games this season for passing. So he got the rushing touchdown, and that hurt Travis Etienne. Although Etienne's efficiency has been quite garbage as of late.
Yeah.
So we want to see that get up. They play the Bengals, which is a good
Yeah, it's a great
matchup this
matchup.
upcoming week. And then after that, the Browns and the Ravens. So enjoy your Jaguars for one more week. Definitely Lawrence will be one of the best plays of the week with Ridley and Etienne in that Bengals matchup. And after that, that stinks for them with those upcoming games. And then on the other side with the Texans, I mean, CJ Stroud just keeps getting it done for fantasy. It's absolutely wild. Another 350-yard game, 3 touchdowns. It was a Nico Collins day. You never know which one it's going to be, but Tank Dell still came up with 5 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown, which he had all that in the first half and then just ghosted the second half. You thought it was going to be a huge game, but Devin Singletary disappeared in this game with Dameon Pierce back. He was still like the main dude, and he got some receptions, which was good, but on the ground, they were both really bad.
Yeah, it's good news. I mean, actually, both of these teams get good matchups. The Bengals' run defense has not been very good. You got the Texans. I mean, the Broncos' run defense has been their issue all season long. I have no idea why the Browns didn't exploit that a little bit more in their game. They did to some degree, but the Texans, I think Singletary is the guy with the high leverage touches. It was good to see him get that receiving work. It kind of saved his day without a touchdown. And look, this is a passing team at heart, and that's what they want to do. And then we knew the Jaguars were pretty good against the run. So it's going to be a little touchdown and reception dependent. Again, it's good to see him getting the work in the passing game. So we'll see how it works out. But I like it. It's starting to streamline a little bit. I'm not sure Dalton Schultz is going to have the consistency now with Nico Collins back and Tank Dell playing. So it's tough. Again, when you have all these great mouths to feed, it's excellent for the quarterback, but not always great for the assets. And that's why you kind of have to dig deep and look for these matchups. But again, the Texans are just fine. I'm really intrigued by this Broncos game this week. It's actually very exciting to see what Houston and Denver can do. Denver's the hottest team in the league. So it could be another sneaky high-scoring game this week, I think, in Houston. So watch out for that. And Michelle, I do have to say, your Steelers looked a lot better. They finally broke through with 400 total yards of offense. Now, look, were there spectacular numbers all over the place? Did George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, although Johnson almost caught a touchdown, probably should have had a touchdown. Were the numbers all that explosive? No, but Pat Freiermuth had a big game. Najee Harris looked really good scoring his touchdown. Jalen Warren slowed down a little bit more here, this offense. But again, product of an offense having actual weapons. Oh my gosh, they have a lot of guys on the field that can do something, and we finally saw them. And what I love about this, Michelle, I call this an appetizer, warm-up. I know Kenny Pickett still can't get the 2 touchdowns. I'm going to call right here. It happens this week against the Cardinals. Their defense is horrible. They're coming to Pittsburgh. So I think I love it that this offense as a whole trending forward, even though you didn't necessarily see the big numbers in fantasy, at least yet, you saw overall the big numbers in NFL.
Yeah, they only put up 16 points, but the whole offense looked so much better. It looked easier. It wasn't every single play they had to make look so extremely hard. It just looked smooth. And guess what? Because they used the middle of the field. And that's why Pat Freiermuth saw so many targets and it was working a ton. I will say with Deontay Johnson, he should have had, if they count that touchdown pass, which was a touchdown, he would have had about 70 yards and a touchdown, and no one would even blink an eye and be like, wow, amazing game for him. And without them counting that, it was 4 receptions, 50 yards, not such a good game. Pickens is always going to be a hit or miss with Deontay there. He gets too many targets, and then if Freiermuth's involved as well, Najee looked like a beast, man. He looked so good. Jalen Warren will be fine moving forward, but he had that fumble and it just kind of messed up his usage a bit to start that game. But really exciting stuff there. And against the Cardinals, yeah, I'm going to be plugging in all these guys again.
Yeah, and we have some really good evidence directly from what the Cardinals did. We'll talk about that. It was an atrocious defensive performance at home against the Rams. The Rams are not the offensive juggernaut, but they woke them up, so that's great. It's really good timing for the Steelers, and we'll get into that special Kyren Williams performance. I mean, it was an amazing day on a return. I'm talking to you, Devin Chan. This is the kind of stuff that we wanted out of you last week, but we'll get into Kyren Williams. We'll get into more rookies delivering here at key positions, including Bijan Robinson. I'm really excited to talk about him. So we'll get to all that in our next segment here, looking at the top storylines, reactions to week 12. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football, as we told you at the top, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's really easy to build a job there on the LinkedIn board. And really, it's important to go through LinkedIn Jobs to make sure that you're getting the quality candidates coming and looking to fill your opening. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy that, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's right. In just one day, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resource to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even have launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Get here to linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by BetterHelp. And look, we sometimes get lost in life, and look, the holidays are a tough time for a lot of us. So there's a lot more people around. Maybe the end of the year, it's getting a little bit colder out there, and we're kind of feeling it maybe in our heads, and we need a little bit of a roadmap to get back on track. And the one thing that's going to help you do that is therapy. And with BetterHelp, you're going to get access to some of the best online therapy you'll find there, and it's going to be catered to your needs here. So that's what I like here. If you're thinking of starting therapy, I would give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, so it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, so you know that you'll have the right fit there as you're joining therapy. It's a time to look for the light here. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn to get 10% off your month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn to get $10 or 10% off your first month. So check that out there. That's a good savings to get started. And look, once you're on with therapy and BetterHelp is going to help you, you're not going to go back. So really appreciate them sponsoring Locked On Fantasy Football. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue with our show, and I did tease Kyren Williams here. Let's get into him, and then I'll save Bijan Robinson. You can bring us in on that one as well. But Kyren Williams, man, he just exploded here. He was involved in the passing game, scoring touchdowns that way, running all over the Cardinals. And I think the Rams were just fed up, right? They finally got everyone healthy together. Matthew Stafford, semi-healthy, but Puka Nacua and some of the other weapons. Tutu Atwell looked good. This is kind of offense that we wanted to see. Tyler Higbee even scored 2 touchdowns. So Kyren Williams, again, he's back, and I think you roll with him. Now, I think with his usage, you have to look at him as an RB1, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, he was that before he got injured, right? Like almost he was one of the most consistent running back performers that you could play from weeks 1 through 6. And now he comes back and he gets all the work. I mean, Royce Freeman got some work too, but a lot of that came towards the end of the game. They were just destroying the Cardinals. I think if it was a closer game, Kyren Williams probably would have went off even more because Royce Freeman had that long rushing touchdown too once Kyren was taking his rest time at the end of the game. But it was absurd. What I don't love to see is Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua not performing yet again. We're going to have to discuss that during our wide receiver ranking show on Thursday. But man, I am starting to get worried about those two for sure. But love that we have another running back we can trust every single week. And then our boy, Bijan Robinson. Finally, Arthur Smith. I will say Tyler Algier still saw 10 carries. It's too much for me still, but fine, because Bijan Robinson got his 2 touchdowns. He was used in the passing game, and he was led the team in carries by far and rushing yards. So, okay, I will take this. Thank you, Arthur Smith. Thank you, Bijan Robinson. Huge day for him.
Yeah, and look, this is their best offense. They tried to mess around with Desmond Ridder. They got impatient, but they also didn't have Drake London, and Drake London was key in this game. He almost had 100 receiving yards because, again, you need some legitimacy to stretch the field of the passing game to open up the running game. And Bijan is going to take advantage of all that space. Get him in the open field, get him matched up against the linebacker, get him going away from the line of scrimmage, and he's going to burst, right? He's going to get these yards, and he's just so talented. And we've seen this with Jahmyr Gibbs. It happened a lot earlier with Jahmyr Gibbs, where the coaching staff, hey, realized we've got to get this ball to the guy as much as possible. The Lions are a much better overall team. But again, the Saints' run defense has been kind of not very good of late. And then the Falcons' defense, whenever they can play with a lead, this is great for Bijan Robinson. So home, the Falcons are really good. They get the Jets this week. Now, the Jets are pretty weak against the run, and Robinson should have some numbers. We know what the Dolphins did to them last week. So I'm very hopeful that he'll keep up this hot streak. Now, other guys that had 2 touchdowns, Isaiah Pacheco had a great matchup against the Raiders. He easily popped into the end zone twice. Another good one against the Packers this week. Looking at the Dolphins, they get the Commanders. Raheem Mostert scored a couple times. Jonathan Taylor looked great for the Colts. They get the Titans this week. So a lot of these trends are going to continue, Michelle. And again, I like that. Like when our main guy gets a couple touchdowns, of course, Christian McCaffrey did it. I think he just does that normally. And then Derrick Henry, it was a bit disappointing in terms of yardage, but hey, he came through with 2 scores as well. Finally, again, that trend of Derrick Henry playing well in games that are ahead still happens. So I love these running backs coming to life right when we need them down the stretch here.
Yeah, 11 running backs had 20 plus fantasy points in PPR this week. Like insane. This is definitely a running back week. Some guys let us down. Like Rashad White didn't do as much as we wanted. He got the yards. He just didn't get the touchdowns. Austin Eckler didn't do what we wanted. But for the most part, it was a great week. Even we brought up Najee already. I mean, 16 points from him. You'll take that, right? Like that's a really good week for Najee Harris in general. So love to see that from these guys. And, you brought up that Bijan has to play the Jets. Kyren Williams will get the Browns. So a couple harder matchups here, but you just keep plugging these guys in, especially Myles Garrett is a bit banged up for the Browns. So if he's playing super injured or out, that completely changes the Browns defense and makes me a lot happier to play Kyren Williams next week.
Yeah, I mean, that was great to see the young backs do well on top of some of the veterans, old reliables coming through for us as well. But how about, Michelle, these rookie wide receivers? Finally, Rashee Rice put together this complete game we've been looking for. Had the touchdown, had the yardage, had the targets, all that. Came against the Raiders. Go figure. They started trailing against the Raiders, and then everything happened. It's like Patrick Mahomes realized, I got some receivers. I'm going to get them going. And I guess that unlocked Rashee Rice. Justin Watson scored again, so that was interesting to see. And then Jalen Hyatt, I mean, Tommy DeVito, we got to give him credit. He's putting the ball in the hands of the best playmakers. He came through with a 100-yard game. Jonathan Mingo might be now involved here for the Panthers as we go forward. So I'm just surprised, Michelle, how many rookie wide receivers. We looked at Tank Dell all season long, but it seems like it doesn't matter. If they're going to have a key role in their team, they're going to keep coming through. And finally, it's great to see Rice do that and be really the number one in Kansas City.
Yeah, the Rice one is so interesting because the last 2 weeks I was like, play Rice, play Rice. Like, I feel like he's about to break out. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess he's not going to break out. So then he's on my bench this week. And of course, it's the game he breaks out. I will say this is the first time a Chiefs wide receiver has had 100 receiving yards in a game this season. It's the first time a Chiefs wide receiver has had more than 5 receptions in a game this season. So I don't know how confident I am that it will continue, but it's not, his snap count was up. That's nice to see. And like he's at 10 targets. I mean, I just would love them to utilize him and forget about the Mecole Hardmans and the MVS, like and Justin Watson. Like, stop targeting those guys and use your really talented rookie wide receiver. I will say for the Giants, Jalen Hyatt, like Tommy DeVito's kind of doing his thing. He's not nearly as bad as we thought he was going to be. Is he someone that you would consider picking up? Unfortunately, as a bye in week 13, so it might be just a waste of a spot right now.
Well, I do like the Giants that they're not quitting, right? Everyone is just like, oh, they have Tommy DeVito. They're just not going to try to win here. And then they win 2 games in a row. Granted, they were against the Commanders and Patriots, but still, they could have disappeared, right? They could have just said, okay, we're just going to play out the string. But I think that's just the Giants' mentality, just as overall as an organization. And they're going to try to get better also. Like, what I like about Tommy DeVito, he's a little bit more fearless, I want to say, than Daniel Jones, where he's going to let it rip. He doesn't care about the back end, and it's leading to great results, right? Sometimes you want that quarterback not to be tentative about throwing to some guys. Like, Jalen Knight's good. Get him fast and going downfield, and you have a good shot of making a play with him. So, again, don't be afraid of these guys. Like, throw. Look, no one's expecting anything. And with Tommy DeVito, he's literally playing with house money here. No one expects anything. The Giants are not going anywhere. Just go for it. I mean, if you impress a few coaches, you're going to stick around in this league for a while as a backup quarterback when you didn't think you were even going to be starting games. So I do like that. And I don't know what we're going to get from Mingo going forward. That guy I'm a little bit shakier on because we're not sure about Bryce Young. The Panthers fired Frank Reich here earlier in the day, so I'm not sure the offensive direction that's happening there. But I'm pretty sure Hyatt has been their number one kind of target. They want to get involved, much like Rice. I think you'll see that going forward for the Giants.
Yeah, I'll be bringing up Mingo pretty early in our show tomorrow for waiver wire. They get the Buccaneers this week. I'm interested. It's definitely a risk without knowing the coaching staff, like what the coaching staff wants to do. But he did lead the team in receptions, receiving yards this past week. So I'm interested just because the matchups is so amazing. And maybe they get their young rookie wide receiver more involved with a new coaching staff. To close out our show in the next segment, we're going to get to, some Tua talk. That's what I'm going to call it. Tua Tagovailoa talk. Because I need to just ask you some questions about him because it seems really hard to play him in away games. And we got to figure that out before the fantasy playoffs. But before we do that, let's talk about another one of our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you from Prize Picks. Do you love playing daily fantasy? If you do, try out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go more or less than the Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. Prize Picks adds a ton of excitement to the sports viewing experience. Yeah, you can even choose from a vast selection of sports and stat types not offered anywhere else. If you want to hop in the fun for the Monday night football game tonight, my favorite pick of tonight's game is DJ Moore, more than 62.5 receiving yards. That's the Bears wide receiver going up against the Vikings. He's averaged 120 receiving yards per game over his last 5 full games with Justin Fields. So if you want to place that pick on Prize Picks, all you have to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Vinny, Tua. So the Dolphins have a great game, right? They beat up on the Jets in New York, or in New Jersey, I should say. But Tua scored 7.8 fantasy points, 26 among quarterbacks this week. On the road this year, he's averaging under 14 fantasy points a game. Has just 8 total passing touchdowns in his 6 road games this year. He gets the Commanders this week on the road. Like, that has to be a good game, right? It's an amazing matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him and you look at the numbers. Tyreek Hill did well. Jalen Waddle finally had his biggest game in several weeks here. And then, okay, so Tua must have had a big game, right? No, but part of it, we know that came into play was you had Raheem Mostert scoring touchdowns. The Jets are a scrappy defense. They're going to hold teams in the red zone and all that, even if they can't get it done in the running game. So I look at the Dolphins. It's a tough matchup for the passing game. The Jets are definitely that, right? And he came through, but again, maybe just a little out of sorts here. And keep in mind, this Dolphins passing game is compressed, right? So if he gets stuck and he doesn't know where to go with the ball and he holds it, he's going to make mistakes against better defenses. Now, the good news, Michelle, you did bring up the Commanders. That is an outstanding matchup. There's no way that secondary can cover Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. So great for them. And again, they had to fire their defense coordinator after that the Cowboys debacle. Jack Del Rio's gone, so they're going to destroy in that matchup. And then actually the next week is also great that they get the Titans, and the Titans are not very good. They kind of opened up, and if Bryce Young had a little bit more time, I think he would have picked them apart yesterday. He just didn't have any time. So we know he can do that right against the Titans secondary. But here's where it gets a little hairy, and this is where I would stack a quarterback behind Tua if you're headed to the fantasy playoffs. Look at the schedule to close during the playoffs. Jets again. So, yeah, that doesn't inspire. That's at home. But then they get the Cowboys. We know how they fare against better teams. And then you go to Baltimore. That would be your kind of championship game in a lot of leagues. So that's before, if you go into week 18, they play the Bills. And we know the Bills can give him trouble as well. So, I don't know. Like, keep in Tua and enjoy him the next couple weeks. But make sure just thinking a little bit ahead there, because you'd be a little nervous if you got to a key part of the fantasy playoffs and you had to play Tua in those matchups. So something just to keep in mind. Again, play them in good matchups and good spots against bad teams, preferably at home. Sometimes you have to play them away, but that's kind of the rule with Tua at this point. And look, he might have hit a ceiling, Michelle. This could be it, right? I don't know if he's going to get all that much better, and this could be him, an inconsistent quarterback.
Yeah, he's just going to be that quarterback that has those huge, huge blow up weeks, and it skews his fantasy data quite a bit. And then the rest of the time, he just doesn't really do anything for you. And it's awesome having him in your lineup in those two great games, but he loses just as many games as he wins for you, unfortunately. I like against the Commanders, it's too good of a matchup to sit him. So it's great. And like you said, Titans the next week after that, but I do not want to have to trust him in my fantasy playoffs at all. One guy I want to ask you, because you're the Jordan Love stan, and he's been really good the last 2 weeks. Really good this last week with nearly 27 fantasy points off of 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Do you think he's a good play moving forward? I am a little bit worried about his schedule. He gets the Chiefs, the Giants. The Giants have been a pretty solid defense lately. The Buccaneers, great matchup. But then the Panthers and Vikings, both away games. Don't love the schedule for him, but do you think he's a viable play moving forward?
Well, let's look at something here. I'm pulling up some other things for you as we're doing the show. Some magic of the internet. I had the Tua schedule, and now I'm looking at where Jordan Love is overall in the season. He's QB 10, so we said he's going to be in the running for a QB 1 spot. He's there overall. Sam Howell also still holding steady as a QB 1. So 2 of the guys we both liked finishing in the top 10 are there. So I like it going forward. Now they're playing the Chiefs this week. It's a tougher matchup. We know how good the Chiefs secondary can be, but I do like it being in Lambeau Field. It is the Sunday night game. So the Packers, what they're doing is just saying, look, Jaden Reed has to open things up in this offense. Christian Watson is fully healthy. We know now a rotation, right? Christian Watson's the big play guy downfield. Jaden Reed's the reliable guy. Romeo Doubs is there kind of as a utility guy. So I think he's kind of getting comfortable with the rotation. And then what I liked last week is no Luke Musgrave, but they just said, here, Tucker Kraft is in the red zone. Let's just use him. He's very athletic. So I think in a weird way, this Aaron Jones injury has kind of opened things up. Like he doesn't have to, he knows, just let it rip. And look at the results. I mean, they're back right in the playoff hunt. It's going to be an interesting game, I think, against the Chiefs. I think their defense is pretty good against the pass. It could keep them around in this one a little bit. But then again, if it's a negative game script and Mahomes comes in there and just rips it, well, that's great, right? He's going to throw a ton in this game. So I don't know if I completely trust him because the Chiefs' defense is good. But then they gave me a little bit of hope. They had a few leaks there in their secondary against the Raiders. So I think he's an okay play. Like, I think he can definitely say he's a little bit more comfortable right now as a play than I would say Sam Howell, right? Just because of where this offense is trending, the matchups, all that. So, yeah, I feel good about it. I mean, he's kind of turned a corner here, and part of it is just having the guys healthy around him.
Yeah, I would be really nervous in this matchup.
Yeah.
I don't wanna play him because I don't think Mahomes is gonna put up a lot of points against the Packers defense in Green Bay, so I think it's just gonna be a low-scoring game, and then also, do you know that, Love in primetime this year, 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions? Hopefully, that's throughout 2 primetime games. Hopefully, he's not, one of those quarterbacks that can't play in primetime. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see if that trend continues. We got through week 12 without too many big injuries, right? There's 3 of notable. If I missed any, let me know. But Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, both for the wide receivers for the Saints. Olave left with a concussion, so it shouldn't be too long of an injury, you wouldn't think. Shaheed left with a thigh injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that and see how long he'll be out for. And then it seems like Amari Cooper might miss some time with a rib injury, so that's probably the biggest injury of the week. And then, yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson go out with a concussion too. So it'll be PJ Walker possibly throwing the ball this week for the Browns.
Yeah, I think when you look at that, I mean, I don't know who the Saints are going to start at wide receiver this week. I mean, Michael
I know.
Thomas is on IR. A.T. Perry, look, I think there was an end zone target that he didn't come down with. And I don't know if the Saints should also change their quarterback. This was disgusting again by Derek Carr throwing that early pick six, which actually helped Bijan Robinson because the Falcons could play with a lead for much of this game. But yeah, you lose Shaheed early. It was great for Chris Olave for the first half. And I started looking at the numbers and why are they not going up? He's dominated the first half and then, oh no, he's out with a concussion. And then this was it. Right. And that was pretty much doomed the Saints. They didn't really have anybody step up. Now, I think who this helps the most here this week, and they're playing the Lions, is Juwan Johnson. The Lions are given against the tight end. So you think you might see a lot of Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, maybe more of Lynn Bowden Jr. randomly getting some key touches for this offense. I don't know what they're going to do. So I'm not hopeful on Olave playing. It's hard to be cleared for concussion in the same week. So that's not great. But yeah, I think you'd have to fade everything with the Saints this week. The Lions should be coming in a bit angry in that game, but it isn't a decent matchup, at least for the tight ends, and maybe that is the necessary pivot for them at this point. So not looking really great for the Saints passing game. Now the Browns passing game, at least David Njoku is a bright spot, but man, Amari Cooper and DTR didn't fit. Maybe PJ Walker will help Amari Cooper if he can play, but keep an eye on Cedric Tillman. He's going to be on the watch list as well for your waiver wire here in week 13, just because, look, they need some weapons and need to do something. It is the Rams this week, so it's not the most comfortable spot, but yeah, Amari Cooper, I'm so really unfortunate. His kind of fantasy value has kind of died here with the quarterback change. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think we avoided any major catastrophe there. That's good. We want our running backs to stay healthy. So overall, I think it was a positive week, Michelle, with a lot of guys we wanted to come through, some guys that were in slumps, Gabe Davis and Bijan Robinson delivering. So I don't think I can be too disappointed overall.
No, yeah. Overall, happy with the injury report, and we'll hit on Juwan Johnson and Cedric Tillman tomorrow on our waiver wire show.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff still to help you. Don't forget about the help. It's critical time. We're getting into the fantasy football playoffs. We need to build our benches. We need some streaming guys. We have 6 buys coming up. So that's another thing we have to navigate through. I don't know why the NFL does this to us, but week 13 is very unlucky with bye weeks, and we'll help you there as well with the waiver wire. Then, as we do, usually we'll look at our running back and quarterback rankings on Wednesday, turn to our other rankings with the wide receiver and tight end, look at flex and sleepers and deep plays there for you in our final show, as well as our prize picks of the week on Friday. So that's how we set up here for the week on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer.
And I'm Michelle Magdziuk. Bye, y'all.